I'm Emily Mashak, and you're listening to Tuned In to NoCo, Town Square Media's show that lets you know what matters in NoCo. I'm talking today with Kristin Glenn, a bereavement mentor and the co-founder of 3Hopeful Hearts, about how the organization can help families who are dealing with loss here in Northern Colorado. So thank you so much for joining me. And now, for those who are unfamiliar, can you describe what 3Hopeful Hearts is and how it came to be here in Northern Colorado?
Yeah, absolutely. We have been in Northern Colorado for about 14 years, started very small with 3 founders that believed that people who had experienced the loss of a child of any age, of any cause, really needed specialized grief support and companionship. And so the 3 of us got together. It was, really interesting to think of the different ways we came to the nonprofit that we eventually formed together. And we started really small. We started with just one event for the first year and, maybe supporting 50 people. And now we support over 1,500 people in Northern Colorado. You always wish that there wasn't a need for something like this, but you also need to recognize that the grief is very different when someone has outlived a child or a sibling. So that's kind of where we started, and now we have our own center and really physically beautiful, welcoming place where people can come and just have listening sessions and support groups and have a safe space to be. So we're really proud that we have a Center for Hope now after this many years.
Would you be able to expand on that a little bit more and the services you offer? Like you said, you have support groups, you have the center, but what does that look like when someone comes to 3Hopeful Hearts?
So we really encourage people soon after the loss of a baby or a child to come to the center to really have that initial listening session, because grief is certainly not a one-size-fits-all support model. We really honor that people need to do their grief in their own way. So after that session that I usually will do with a family and extended family if needed, because it's such a ripple effect when a child dies. It's so unnatural as far as the sequence of life to lose someone so early. So there's grandparents and siblings and aunts and uncles and teachers. And so really to have that initial time with them helps me assess where are the needs. And we do bereavement in the workplace support for their work environments to understand how to support them best, as that entry into working again is really tough. We can go to the schools and talk to the teachers and the coaches. We provide the support groups. We, in fact, have 12 each month that are for different types of losses, because we want someone that had a miscarriage loss to be with people that they can really connect with versus someone that lost a child, an older child, to suicide. So we have very tailored support groups, dads groups, grandparents groups, sibling groups. So kind of assessing a support group if that's the style of grief outreach that they would do well with. We also do a lot of just one-on-one. There's a lot of research that just companioning someone through grief is what's needed 90% of the time. If someone were to have maybe an underlying mental health issue or some substance use issues, we also have some ability to work with counselors in town, but we're not a counseling model. So we have good community partnerships that we would refer out to. And then about once a month, we provide a memorial activity, whether it be to make something in honor of their children or come to a presentation regarding their grief. We work closely with Alan Wolfelt, and he's so gracious with his time to offer presentations. He's a nationally known grief expert. We have a lending library. Around the holidays, we do a lot of candle lighting type of events. In October, there's a pregnancy loss day. So kind of every month has something that is a group gathering experience that is open. And we try to keep everything we offer with without any charge to families.
Right. And I know that when people come to 3Hopeful Hearts, obviously it's not for a good reason, but it is great to see that your organization is able to help people. In your time there, since you've started this, how have you seen it impact the Northern Colorado community and our families in a positive way?
I think that's such a great question. I think that grief is just so taboo in the first place. Our culture doesn't do a good job of really honoring grief rituals and allowing people to have as much time as they possibly need to grieve. And then especially when a child is lost, people just are so afraid of losing their own babies and children that kind of grief after a death is so unthinkable that many times people, well-meaning friends and family, don't quite know how to reach out. So I think it's just this kind of incredible community that's been built over the years. And I've seen lifelong friendships formed. I've seen people that honor each other's milestone with their surviving children. The love that's shared among the people, it's just incredible. We just had our Walk to Remember, and we had over 250 people that gathered. It's just this environment of not having to say a word, but still know that you're walking alongside someone that really understands. One dad said to me one time, I can be in a stadium full of people and feel completely alone, but I can sit next to one bereaved dad and feel like so companioned and so much love coming from him that my loneliness and isolation really subsides. So I think that's that connection and just that humanness is what we're all about.
Yeah. Would you say that the fact that grief and the grieving process is often considered taboo, do you think that's something that listeners need to be more aware of when it comes to the process of grieving, that it's okay to talk about it?
Yes, absolutely. I think that through education and through just exposure to people that are grieving, it's such a gift for someone that's grieving to be asked about that person, and especially a child. We talk about our babies and children all the time, but it seems like the moment a death occurs, it's so awkward. You're not supposed to either talk about it as the bereaved person, or the person that's supporting them often wonders, do I bring up their name? Do I ask about how they're doing? And the answer is absolutely yes. But I think becoming more comfortable with grief will do nothing but just make our community stronger. And we provide a ton of education just in that realm, because it's not 3Hopeful Hearts that needs to provide the support all the time. It's really your neighbor and your barber and your coworker. And so if we can support the supporters, that's really when I feel like we're most impactful.
Right. And going off of that, you mentioned some examples, and I'm sure it's very situational, but what are some of the best practices that our listeners can use when they are trying to be that support system for a bereaved person or family?
Another great question. I feel like minimizing assumptions and minimizing advice is so important. Try not to say the two words "at least," because that really minimizes the loss, whether it's at least you have other children, at least he didn't suffer, at least he's in peace, not making assumptions about spiritual beliefs. So it's really about being curious about someone's grief and not being afraid to ask questions like, how is it for you to want to support your surviving child? How is it for you to be asked to go to a baby shower and long for your own baby? What's it like for you to be at work and have your pictures of your child on your desk? And do you mind me asking about them? Do you want to give me kind of a signal on days that you want to talk and a signal when you don't? Like, just asking those questions and letting people know you're thinking of them. I think the other thing that we do is we believe that if we don't give support early on, it's kind of too late. And that is just so false. It's really interesting to think about how much support happens immediately afterwards. We, have funerals and celebrations of life, and literally often hundreds of people gather. And there's so much support, but yet the bereaved family is just in a daze. And they're overwhelmed by the food and the outreach and the flowers and the donations and the knocks on the door. And then time passes and everybody starts going back to their lives. And I think that it doesn't matter whether it's been 6 months, 6 years, 20 years. With 3Hopeful Hearts, we always reach out to families on every anniversary date. And I don't even like the word anniversary, but just that day that their lives changed forever. Asking them, I know it's been 7 years, how are you doing? I know it's been 20 years, how are you doing? And saying the name of their child. Because by that time, you kind of feel like, has everyone forgotten? Has everyone forgotten that, still one of the hardest questions I get asked, because I'm a bereaved parent myself, that's why I started 3Hopeful Hearts with those two other lovely women, is how many children do you have? And I will never exclude my son that died from that count. And I am rarely asked about him anymore. So part of 3Hopeful Hearts for me is a way to honor him and to honor that he will always be part of our family. So I think we had a great session with hairstylist. There you are, you're at least there for probably an hour, and the hairstylist were like, people bring up such hard things. Do I just ignore that they said they had this terrible loss? And so we just really gave them permission to kind of go there and just ask the questions. And silence is literally golden. I think sometimes we try so hard to fill space, and just being comfortable with the uncomfortable and being in someone's space that's grieving, they can kind of get a sense of who those safe people are. I used to have a lot of people say, oh my gosh, I brought it up and I'm so sorry I made you cry. And I used to feel like telling them, you let me cry. I could tell you were safe. So you let me just have a space that I could be in whatever part of my grief I needed to be in. So just that phrase of being uncomfortable, it's uncomfortable, but trying to be as calm and not fill the space with advice, because advice is really unhelpful.
Well, thank you for sharing your story and opening up about that on here. And I know there are some of our listeners out there who are probably going through a similar situation. How can they reach out to 3Hopeful Hearts?
So the best way is probably just an email, going to our website. It is the number 3 and then hopefulhearts.com, and just sending us an email. There's a number on our website too that you can call. We usually answer most 24/7 times, but that outreach then immediately will cue us to reach back out to a family, whether it's them specifically that are grieving or whether it's a friend or family that they're concerned about. We would never just reach out. We would always want to have permission to, because it's such a private experience, but it also is a lot to ask someone to do the reaching out themselves. So we know that model of just giving someone like a card or a pamphlet rarely does someone that's truly grieving much good. It just turns into one more thing that takes energy, and grief takes so much energy. So as family and friends and people that care, doing that initial kind of legwork to find out about our services and come in with a grieving person and know more about what can be offered after the loss of a baby or a child. So I think that's a really caring, compassionate thing to do.
And for our listeners who may want to get more involved, feel connected to the cause, can they volunteer? Can they donate?
Yes, please. Yes, we need all the things. So we need volunteers for all sorts of things, whether it be sewing our kind of signature felt hearts that we give to people. We give weighted bears after a baby dies that are weighted the same weight as the baby. We need volunteers that have those kind of skills. We need volunteers that are just excellent listeners. We need volunteers that would like to come clean our little center. So it's, I think sometimes people think, oh my gosh, volunteering for 3Hopeful Hearts, that means I'm going to be really surrounded by that deep sadness and I don't know if I'm up for it. And there's so many opportunities, and we are clearly always in need of donations, probably more than anything, just to make sure that we maintain our center, maintain our ability to offer things like camps and couples outreach and retreats free of charge still. So the donations are incredibly helpful, and they go immediately. We have a very, very small staff, so they go really immediately into operations, and that can be done on our website too.
That is awesome. And well, now I know that the music benefit event has passed, but you have a lot of other events coming up, I saw. Can you tell me more about those? What's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Losing a child is really difficult for a relationship. So at the end of October, we have a 3-day couples retreat that's going to be in this beautiful mountain home. And it's an opportunity for couples to gather with others that understand and really work on keeping their relationship strong, because it can really cause significant problems within a marriage and a couplehood. So that's coming up at the end of October. Like I said, in mid-October is a pregnancy loss day on the 15th. So we'll do a virtual candle lighting that I would love for people to honor their own losses or people that they care about. And then in December, we do a couple events outdoors that are designed to really recognize that the holidays are really tough. So the candlelight tributes that we do in December can be really meaningful for families. And they're kind of like the walk to remember in that it doesn't just have to be the parents and sibling. It can be that ripple of support that attend these events with the family. So it really means a lot. We had, at the Walk to Remember, we had one family that brought over 50 people to walk with them, and they all had pictures and wore superhero capes. And it was so beautiful to see them honor this little boy. And it was so impactful for the family to know that he was never going to be forgotten.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kristin, for taking the time to come and chat with me today. Is there anything else you would like our listeners to know?
I think that you've asked some really good questions, and I'm just honored to be asked to be here. I do think that it's a brave topic for any show, so that this station is going to do this, I think is really helpful. And if people just want to know more about companioning someone during grief, we are just a phone call or an email away for that kind of education.
Of course, happy to get the message out. Thank you, Kristin.
Thank you so much.
Again, that was Kristin Glenn talking about 3 Hopeful Hearts. You can learn more at the number 3hopefulhearts.com.